With there now being a couple of weeks left till version 2.4 comes to an end, the next big character most players are likely hyped for would be the highly anticipated Phrolova, which will feature next version update as the standalone new limited 5-star character. Of course, design-wise and especially lore-wise, Phrolova does seem to be one of the more interesting characters in their game, given there is still quite a bit of mystery behind the character which I expect we will finally learn about next update. Additionally, with the fact that she will actually be our first playable character from the Fraxidus, that would likely be another reason of many to why players will be interested in picking her up. So with that being said, I'll be going over the ascension and skill upgrade materials required to prepare for Phrolova, team synergies you may want to consider building, weapons that can be utilized, viable echo builds, then I'll be wrapping it up with the overall value and if you should summon for Phrolova. As always, if you're interested in more WutheringWaves content, would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. But just before we dive right in, if you were one of the victims drained from the absolute stunners in version 2.4 and now need some additional Lunites to prepare for version 2.5, then you may want to check out this sponsor. Loot Bar is a safe and reliable top-up platform that allows you to pick up game currency for an even lower price than in-game. Such as in WutheringWaves, you are able to pick up selected items with up to 21% off. So if you are thinking about picking up some Lunite or even just renewing your Lunite subscription, then you may as well pick it up from Loot Bar and save some money. All you need to do is head to the website and click on whichever pack you would like to pick up, then fill out your game account details, choose your preferred payment method, and in a couple of minutes you will receive your Lunites. Also, it's fair to mention that the double top-up bonus will be provided even when going through Loot Bar, so you aren't missing out. Lastly, as of now, new users are eligible for a 10% off coupon, along with a bunch of other coupons for an extra discount. So again, if you are looking for a quick and safer way to pick up discounted game currency than other websites, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in the description. Now Phrolova, as we do already know, has been confirmed to be a Havoc Rectifier character, which would then mean she will firstly require all 4 types of helixes to upgrade her skills. Alongside that, she will need polygon cores in specific, which as usual can be picked up from various enemies in Rinascita or domains. As for the weekly boss materials required, you'll need 26 netherworld stairs in total, and as for the open world boss materials, you wouldn't actually be able to pre-farm those as there will be a new boss in 2.5 that will drop the materials needed. Aside from just that, you will be able to pick up every other material, including 60 Bloodleaf Viburnum flowers to completely ascend Phrolova to max level. Now going over a few team compositions to consider, with the fact Phrolova is again a Havoc character that will play as either a main DPS or sub DPS, it does mean there will be a handful of compositions where she would be viable in. However, the one synergy I have mentioned a few times now consisting of herself and Cantarella will definitely be the very best. Given Cantarella without a doubt is tailor-made to amplify Phrolova's damage through her outro skill, whilst also dealing considerable damage herself, healing allies, slowing enemies to allow battles to be more comfortable, and can deal damage off field. Now even with a kit as stacked as that, since release there hasn't been any characters that can fully take advantage of Cantarella's kit, given she still currently fits into niche positions and isn't really the best in slot for any DPS. So with Phrolova being the first to fully utilize her outro that amplifies resident skill damage and havoc damage, but also may have additional synergy with Cantarella's abilities that scale off echo skill damage, to those that fell into Cantarella's trap in 2.2 will now finally be able to maximize her kit's potential when pairing her alongside Phrolova. Now along with those two, you can either opt to use the Shorekeeper or Verena as the support, which would enable Phrolova to be the main DPS whilst Cantarella being the sub DPS. However, I believe it's fair to bring up again that the Havoc team could end up being very similar to the current Fusion team, where Cantarella would be the dedicated support due to her healing capabilities, whilst Phrolova would be the sub DPS for another Havoc DPS. But that would of course depend on whether Phrolova does have an outro skill able to amplify Havoc damage and another type of damage for the DPS switching in. If so, then there is a chance current Havoc damage dealers such as Camellia, Roccia, or even Havoc Rover, alongside future Havoc damage dealers to be in the first slot. Though in specific with Roccia, the fact that she does actually amplify Cantarella's basic attack damage and Havoc damage with her outro skill does make her a great option to utilize. Or even Danjin, as she does provide a Havoc damage amplification through her outro skill. But whether Phrolova will be able to amplify Havoc damage and another type of damage bonus is yet to officially be confirmed and would be necessary for those teams. Now, aside from the mono Havoc composition, other characters that can amplify resonant skill damage such as Brant and Jeji should also work great with Phrolova, considering not only will they amplify her resonant skill damage through their outro skills, but will also be able to deal considerable damage alongside a few other buffs. However, if you don't have those two, or if they are occupied on other teams, there would also be Taochi and Lumi as more free-to-play options that can amplify resonant skill damage through their outro skills. So Havoc characters and non-Havoc characters, there will be a handful of compositions worth considering that are viable for Phrolova, allowing her to be quite versatile for many players, as by now you likely would have a couple of the aforementioned characters. Now moving on to some weapon options that Phrolova can utilize. Before anything, as usual, the signature weapon will be the best option since it is tailor-made, especially since there aren't any 5-star rectifiers that provide a resonant skill damage or Havoc damage bonus, which are bonuses I would expect the signature rectifier to provide. It would mean the signature will unsurprisingly allow Phrolova to deal more damage than with any other weapon. However, there are still alternative options that can allow Phrolova to perform well enough to clear majority of content, such as the String Master, which has a massive crit rate main stat and a very easy to activate passive providing a considerable attack bonus. Though in order to fully maximize the passive, the equipper must be able to deal damage off field. So unless Phrolova can also deal coordinated attacks, she wouldn't exactly be able to obtain the full attack bonus from the passive. Even with that said, the String Master will still remain as one of the stronger alternatives since the passive provides a bonus that Phrolova can actually make use of. Aside from the String Master, the other alternatives wouldn't exactly have the best passives, but they do have solid main stats such as the Rhyme Drape Sprouts providing a massive 72% crit damage bonus, or the Cosmic Ripples with a huge 54% attack bonus alongside the Augment that provides a 20% crit rate bonus. So again, they may not have the best passive effects, but since a weapon like the Rhyme Drape Sprouts in specific does provide a significant crit damage increase, it will still be a viable alternative as it would allow Phrolova to be much easier to build. Lastly, it's worth mentioning that again, with the possibility Phrolova can deal echo skill damage similar to Cantarella, which is hinted by the fact that she can control echoes throughout the story, it does mean Whispers of Sirens likely will also be a solid option and can be fully utilized since it does require the equipper to deal additional echo skill damage. So with that, and also having a massive crit damage main stat, Cantarella's signature weapon can definitely be an alternative option for Phrolova to utilize. But unless you do have 2 copies of the weapon, you likely aren't going to be using it on Phrolova and instead would have it equipped on Cantarella. So perhaps for the reason there aren't really any rectifiers that Phrolova can fully utilize, if you don't have the String Master or a second copy of the Whispers of Sirens at the very least, it might be worth considering the signature weapon if you do intend to use Phrolova to clear most content once you do pick her up. Now as for the viable echo builds, there are a couple of echo sets that seem viable, such as the Havoc Eclipse, which provides a 40% Havoc damage bonus in total, alongside the Midnight Veil, which provides a 10% Havoc damage bonus, whilst also granting a 15% Havoc damage bonus to the character switching in and dealing an additional 480% Havoc damage when the outro skill is triggered. Now even with those sets being viable to utilize, there are a few indicators that point towards there being a new echo set tailor-made for Phrolova in 2.5, such as the fact the Midnight Veil echo set is already utilized by Cantarella, which often means there wouldn't be a second character on the team utilizing the exact same set. In addition, the forecast echoes for the Midnight Veil echo set in specific don't provide any bonus towards resonant skill damage. Instead, they do provide a bonus towards basic attack damage and heavy attack damage. The Havoc Eclipse set, on the other hand, does have the Crownless, which does provide a resonant skill damage bonus. But whether the Havoc Eclipse set is meant to be Phrolova's best in slot set is a bit questionable due to it being one of the older sets. Lastly, big characters in the story usually do end up receiving their own tailored echo set. But I guess at this point, most characters as of recent have just received their own echo sets despite their prevalence. So essentially, with there being a good chance for a brand new Havoc echo set to release alongside Phrolova, you can opt to build a Havoc Eclipse set or Midnight Veil set to use on day 1 for now, but it would be best to not really bother farming for any sets aside from the one that should potentially be dropping next update tailored for Phrolova. Now as for the stats to prioritize on a 4-3-3-1-1 build, either crit rate or crit damage will as usual be the best, and the one you opt for will depend on the weapon you do equip. The 3 cost will unsurprisingly want Havoc damage bonus, and the 1 cost will want attack percent. As for the substats, crit rate and crit damage will be priority, following with resonant skill damage, attack percent, and energy regen. All in all, Phrolova will definitely be a great character, and yet another character in a row Kuro decide to release that is insanely difficult to skip. Of course, it is still a bit early to establish Phrolova's true value and impact on the meta, but with the fact that she will firstly be releasing after characters such as Cartethyia and Lupa, it may provide some insight towards the amount of power Phrolova may hold as she follows in their footsteps. Additionally, it's pretty typical for a great character to release after insanely hyped characters. But also, since she has been quite an anticipated character since the beginning of the game, Kuro likely wouldn't want to fumble the bag and will make Phrolova a character that has been worth the wait. Though above all, whether or not you should summon will majorly depend on whether you do already have Cantarella on your account, since she will allow Phrolova to play at her very best in terms of performance. If you still want Phrolova and don't have Cantarella, then it's worth mentioning Cantarella's rerun is most likely dropping next update, which then gives you a chance to pick up both Phrolova and Cantarella together. If for some reason you don't have or pull for Cantarella on her rerun but still pick up Phrolova, she will still be viable within other compositions and does have good long-term potential depending on that outro skill of hers. But in terms of damage, I'd of course say to not expect Phrolova to perform as good as she would within her premium composition. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe for more WutheringWaves content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also, drop a comment down below on whether or not you will be pulling for Phrolova. And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.